Alrighty, I think we are all set to go. Just making sure someone can hear me okay? Okay, perfect. All right, good evening and welcome. I am the president of the African American Alumni Chapter. My name is India Williams, and it's a pleasure to be here with you all this evening. Today's meeting is in celebration of Juneteenth, and with that, Nakia, our chapter secretary, is going to introduce a very special guest. But few house rules. If you like what you see, like what you hear, feel free to send some nice chats. They also have some emojis at your bottom right of the screen. And we will also address questions at the end. So you can either write them down or chat them in as you think of them. And we'll be sure to address it towards the end of today's meeting. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to the host of the show, Nakia.
Thank you, India. Welcome everybody to our Juneteenth Observation Day program. My name is Nakia Boog Merrill. I am the chapter secretary for the Southeastern Louisiana University African American Alumni Association. I also am the president of the Phi Beta Sigma Alumni chapter for Southeastern as well. And I'm also a Sigma host here in North Dallas. And that brings me to how I met our guest for today, Mr. Joe Roland IV. Joe was once my chapter president in Omicron Sigma chapter, Phi Beta Fraternity Incorporated. I've been knowing Joe for about 7 years, and he is related to a national icon. Let's just call it what it is. And so he agreed to meet us today. So welcome, Joe.
Hey man, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. So, I pulled some strings. I got on the phone, and I brought a special guest with myself as well. So I know you guys want to hear great stories about her. I figured before I talk about it, you guys might as well meet her. So if you could go ahead and bring my great grandmother, Dr. Opal Lee. There she is, to the screen. Grandier, how are you? She's on mute.
I'm kicking high, but I'm
So you're in DC right now, right?
Right.
Okay. Well, hey, first off, I appreciate you hopping on, but I kind of feel like you owe me, because I drove all that way for you and my baby. We got to hang out this weekend. So I just want you to take time, if you could, talk to the people that are on, or that you kind of the mission and vision now, that we've got the bill passed and everything like that. So let the people. We'll give you some time to kind of give us your spill on everything and how you feel.
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is say hello, young people. And you're all young people if you're not 95. Now, I like hanging out with you youngsters because I learn a lot. But I think there's some things you don't know. And I wanted to tell you about Juneteenth. I want you to know it's about freedom. I'm even advocating that we celebrate from the 19th of June to the 4th of July. But you need to know that a General Gordon Granger and several thousand Black troops made their way to Galveston, Texas, where there were 250,000 enslaved people. Now, President Abraham Lincoln had signed this Emancipation Proclamation 2.5 years earlier. But the news hadn't reached Galveston, they say. I think it had. But the plantation owners had crops to get out, and so they didn't tell it. And when those troops began to circulate and tell the people that the slaves were free, and the general nailed the order to the door of what's now Reedy Chapel African Methodist Episcopal Church. And when those folk came in from work and somebody read that to them, we started celebrating, and we've been celebrating ever since. Now, celebrations take different turns. I'm sure you know that we've gotten Juneteenth as a national holiday these days. And I tell my folk, because we worked hard to get that done. It took us years. But we actually took 1,500,000 signatures to Congress. And we were prepared to do that when we got a call to go to the White House and see the bill being signed by the president. Don't you know, if we had 3 million people on the same page, we could turn this country around? But I can dream, can't I? There's always the possibility that it'll happen. Did anybody else need to ask me a question?
Yeah, yeah, and they got a couple. I got one real quick. So when you were in the White House, and I know you were there, like the front row, because the president ran to you. Were you expecting him to really tell your story up there on the stage before they signed the bill?
Was I expecting him?
Like, I was surprised that the conversation, he brought you up. I mean, like, he took a knee to you. He took a knee to you when you signed the bill. When he signed the bill, he took a knee to you. I was shocked watching it. I was at work. I think my invitation got lost, Grandier, to go with you, but that's okay. I'm not bitter about it. And so I just know when you saw it, being there, being live in that moment, how was that?
Being there at the White House when you signed it, did you expect him to, talk about your story?
I tell you, I was humbled by being there and him signing the bill. I didn't know how to act. In fact, I'm still pinching myself to be sure it really happened. But he said something to me, and everybody's asked me what he said, and I said, I'm gonna keep something to myself. That's all everything. But I was delighted. I never figured in my lifetime that I'd get that bill signed. And so many people worked. P. Diddy helped us get that 1.5 million signatures.
And you hugged Usher. That's my biggest thing is I knew you made it when you hugged Usher. When I seen Usher Raymond, when you hugged Usher, I knew that you had made it.
But I'm delighted that you young people understand that Juneteenth is not just a festival. I mean, we have a breakfast of prayer. And don't confuse it with a prayer breakfast where you eat a lot of food. And of course, we have the Miss Juneteenth pageant. We have what's called Empowering You, where youngsters learn how to go about getting a scholarship. People learn how to buy a house, learn how to get the credit straight. how to get some wheels under, empowering you to be the best person you can. Get that. Are you hearing me?
Yes, ma'am. We can hear you. And I
So,
think they do. They got a couple of questions, and then we'll set you free.
okay, come on.
I have a question. Now that Juneteenth is a national holiday and you had like a huge part to play in that, just taking a look at how long it's taken us to get here in America to get to this point, like it's 2021 at that time. What type of feelings does that stir?
Well, I was elated. I really was. I just feel that if we could accomplish that, we can accomplish some other things. And I just hope it doesn't take as long. We've got to tackle our education system and get them to really tell the truth in our books so that we can learn what actually happened and heal from it and be sure it doesn't happen again. And we've got to address homelessness and joblessness and health care that some can get and others can't. We've got to address climate change. And that's something we're doing to our earth ourselves. And if we're not careful, we're all going to hell in a handbasket if we don't look out for ourselves.
Awesome. Thank you. Nakia?
I have one quick question, Sarah. First, it's an honor and a privilege to even get to have this moment to talk to you. Like I'm like literally in awe and starstruck. Like, Joe, you can leave now. We don't even need to talk to you anymore. I would like to ask you, what does it mean to you to have Joe's daughter walk with you the past 2 years? I mean, that's your great granddaughter who's getting to make history with you. Like how special is that to you?
Well, to tell you the truth, she saved my life once. I was in Houston and I had to do that 2.5 mile walk. And I was so tired, I said, oh, these people gonna have to put me in a wheelchair. And Joe brought Grace Renee, and I got a hold to her scrotal handles, and I made that 2.5 miles. And I tell everybody, Grace Renee saved my life.
Like that's like I'm really in tears over here. Like I really am. Like I really get emotional right now. We definitely thank you for your time. We know you have a busy schedule, so we are beyond thankful for you to take out some time for us. Thank you to the rest of the family that's there to help make this possible. I am like really like chill bumps and emotional right now. Like I'm so thankful for this moment. So,
I want to thank you, young people, for carrying on and realize that it's up to you to get us past where we are. Each one of us is responsible for another of us. It's in the Bible. We are our brother's keeper. So change somebody's mind. If we can be taught to hate, we can be taught to love. It's left up to you to change people's minds.
Well, Reindeer, we appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time. For coming out. I owe you a visit and probably a dust of all your monuments in your house. So thank you again for coming through. We appreciate you. You get some rest. Okay.
All right, and thank you for having me. Bye.
Bye. I'll call you.
man, where do we go from here? Like I'm really interested. Oh man, Joe, that's a hard act to follow, man. How are we gonna do that?
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's a tough one to follow. Probably should have. If she wasn't so tired, I would have had her come at the end or something. But
Yeah, she's
so yeah, man, thank you. Thank you for creating a avenue. And my thing is with her and her engagement with people is very genuine, if you can tell, because it's not. A lot of people think this is an overnight thing. This has been going on. She's been pushing for over 45 years. Um, with it started with an idea about a celebration, having our own celebration in Fort Worth, Texas, and then she just had this idea of like, yo, I'm finding, and I remember, she would be like, I'm learning more and more people celebrate Juneteenth. This really should be a national holiday. And a lot of these ideas kind of talk, sit around like the dinner table or a family meeting or a cookout. And then it's very rare it gets turned into action. How many times have we heard a good idea that just stayed an idea? And so she's in the thing about this piece. Why it doesn't surprise me that it happened is I've seen her do that. I've seen her do that in other areas. Like before the call, right? I was telling her, asking her when's the next time she's coming to Houston, and she was like, "Well, I got people to feed. I got people that need waiting on their food, stuff like that." Because that's been her avenue is just in genuinely taking care of other people.
like that's so dope. Like I know, like just as I know as Black people, we always, we have um, that one just lightning rod in the family that we know we can always depend on, those who would give us wisdom. And I say Black people, I'm sure all families have that, but we're talking about, your family, my family. So, well, I'll say Black family. We know that we have that one person, and this is my first time ever talking to her, seeing her like this. I've seen the interviews, I see pictures on your page all the time, but like she just genuinely comes off as that person just in this 15 minutes that we talked to her. Like
Yeah.
she come up as full of life. And what people may not realize, she's 95. Like,
Yeah, yeah, she's been at it. Like I said, the biggest thing, man, we I, I would say she's being nice. She's being nice, but because you have to know, in order to get things done through civic engagement, you have to be relentless. And just like with not to compare her to Martin Luther King or anything, but he was not popular when he died for a reason because he was relentless in his actions of what was needed and what was going. And some of the things that she's speaking of, he spoke of as well. He's like, we're not finished. There are inequities occurring with pay gaps, opportunity gaps that are occurring. If you heard her say, what does she say? Education, homelessness, and it kind of mirrors those pieces that we've been struggling with for such a long time. And so, one of the things is, to me, she's an American patriot, American hero. And my thing is, being an American patriot means you care for troops more than just when they're overseas fighting for the country, but when they're home too. If you were to do the numbers on how many people are homeless that are vets, you would be alarmed to see the numbers or engaged in. I've done food deliveries with her when I was a kid. I always thought she was the coolest person ever because she always had a story for everything. Or, we'd be driving, it'd be like a big oak tree. She's like, yeah, I remember when that tree was planted. You know what I'm saying? And it'd be like, oh, man, you're old enough for me to believe that. And she's always had a wealth of knowledge, but also that's where the work ethic. When people tell you no and you have a dream, what do you do? And I've heard her be told no a lot, a lot, right? So I'm gonna tell you the story, and it has nothing to do with Juneteenth, but it'll just tell you the power of going past no, because that's kind of her DNA. So I don't know who won it. I think my dad won it. Somebody won concert tickets to see Lil Bow Wow. All right. Back in my day, Lil Bow Wow was it. Him and Lil Romeo going back and forth. But Like Mike had just came out. All right. He's playing basketball, and his show was sold out. It was sold out for almost a month. And my grandmother found out me and my dad were going to go see Lil Bow Wow, and she said, "I'm going to. I want him to perform at Juneteenth." And I looked at her and I said, "Granddear, there's no way in the world this sold out show for Lil Bow Wow, the hottest ticket in the nation right now, is going to let you in." And when I tell you, I had to eat crow because when I walked in, she walked in too. Not only did she walk into the concert, She talked to his travel manager about setting up a date. I just couldn't believe my eyes. That's the type of person that she is. Or when Oprah was doing her tour and she wanted to talk to Oprah, or she wanted to meet Obama, she turned, one of her properties into a voting registration office, and she's sliding them notes about making Juneteenth a national holiday, and different things like that. Like she goes for no. And so for me to see it like kind of just escalate the way they did, some aspects of it are surprising, parts of it isn't because she is just a relentless person, but she has an idea when she does. And I see a lot of that in Grace. Every time I try to put Grace to bed, she goes for no two, just like that.
Like that's like awesome. All right, so let's kind of rewind a little bit here. So the initial the initial course of this conversation interview was for you to talk about about her, you growing up with that as your great grandmother, like like how, like I say, I'm sure, and this was the question I was asking, that's kind of the way I was going with it too. Like, it was your great grandmother. Like, when did you realize like your great grandmother was the grandmother of Juneteenth? Like, when did that change happen for you of her being this? I know it before last year, before the bill was officially signed. I know it happened well before that, but when did it come to you like wait a minute, like this is my great grandma, like y'all like really celebrate, or her movement that y'all celebrate?
Honestly, bro, she's been, in my opinion, she's been big time. When I was 12 or 13 years old, when I knew she was a big deal, when the city of Fort Worth put a sculpture of her downtown in their new train system. They unveiled a mural of her as being part of Fort Worth history. That's when I knew. And I'm 34 years old. So over 20 years ago is when I knew my grandmother was a big deal in the city of Fort Worth. All right. And then she was a chairman of Juneteenth for the city of Fort Worth as well. And she was like, one of the top 50 influential people in the nation, around that time also. She came to the family. We have like a very structured family meetings where we sit in dialogue about our family history, things we have going on, our different, family properties. And she came to us 2015 or 16 and said, "Hey y'all, I'm gonna help. We're gonna make Juneteenth a national holiday. I'm gonna walk from here to DC." And I said, me personally, I looked at her in the eyes and I said, "You old, you crazy, no way." And I'm gonna tell you about someone who's relentless in their vision and mission. She did it. She did it on her own. I think it was my aunt Dion who's our right arm, who handles everything for her, that manages her schedule and everything like that, was her road dog. And surely no one was following her. She did it on her own. And as she, then 10 people started, 15 people, and now you got thousands of people that march with her when she goes to city to city, so she would start and she would walk 2.5 miles, and then she go to another city, walk 2.5 miles, and go to another city, all the way up to the Congressional Black Caucus in DC. That happens in September. So her walk started in April and May. And in case y'all didn't notice, it's hot outside right now. So in the heat of the moment, she would be walking to DC, walking up to DC to prepare to bring signatures and so forth. And just so y'all know, it is very hard to get a bill on the floor. You have to, you don't just have to know people. You have to know people that have the same vision idea, who are okay with stepping out or taking lead over that. So while she's walking, she's also navigating, dealing, and engaging policy. Now, one thing about our family that I'm proud of is our civic engagement. Understanding marches are great. Changing policy is better. All right. Engaging and using that to engage in influence to change policy is the goal. And that was the goal that we had. And so this is probably the third, fourth time where we actually got the bill to the floor, to the floor. And I think last year, 2 years ago, it was held up by a senator from Wisconsin. And then there was a senator from Utah that said it was physically irresponsible to make Juneteenth a national holiday. He was the only person, because it has to go through unanimously. And then, certain events happened to where it gained momentum, and before you know it, we had the opportunity for it to get to the floor. It was in favor of, it was at the right time. Sometimes you got to be at the right place in the right time. But if you're not prepared, if you're not moving the way that you need to move, then your opportunity, as small as it may be, your opportunity, you'll miss that opportunity to make the change you want to change. Had she given up, honestly, 6 months before, there was an incident where one of the President Trump was going to have a rally in Oklahoma on Juneteenth weekend, and that's when it really helped escalate it forward. Had she quit 6 months before that, then we'd be having a different conversation about it being a bill, because she was already pressing way before then. You on mute.
Sorry, I'm not used to. I'm the guy. I'm usually the guy behind the scenes. I'm not used to being the guy on this side of the camera doing this part. So forgive me about that. We heard about talk about the family structure. We heard about the 2.5 mile. So let's talk. Let's get more into that. So break down the family structure. So how do Joe Roland IV get to Opal Lee? Where's the family?
So my father is Joe Roland III. My grandfather is Joe Roland II, and my grandfather looks exactly like Dr. Opal Lee. They all look like fairly similar close. So my grandfather, she's my grandfather's mother. All right. And so that's kind of how the branch, goes. And so I would hang out. I don't know if she was my babysitter or what, but I just know I was left with her a lot as a child. She always had something for us to do, whether it be cleaning off her, because growing up, like, she'd have keys to the city where mayors have given her for her hard work and for the city and civic engagement. And take in mind, too, she's also in the Fort Worth ISD Teaching Hall of Fame, where she was an educator in Fort Worth ISD as well. So she's done multiple, this is really kind of like, her third, fourth career, because she was a chairman of the food bank. She had a nonprofit where I actually was a computer teacher for her computer classes. She had a computer classes for the elderly. And in 7th to 8th grade, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I taught that class for the elderly. How I got into it, who knows? She probably asked me, and I couldn't say no. And she's a really hard person to say no to.
She seemed like it. Even just the brief engagement we had with her, setting stuff behind the scenes, it just seemed like she's still kind of in her way, like like, hey, this is what we're doing. What you doing? Because just again, to pull the curtain back a little bit, when we set it up, she was talking to you. You were like, no, I'm not that one, not me. This is for my dad.
Oh, she was talking about my dad. She was like, oh yeah, she said, when are you coming up to my house? No. I said, no, I'm the good one. I'm the good Joe. But yeah, no, man, she and we all used to live together. Me, all three Joes, used to live together. But we all have a different relationship or aspects of relationship with her. I just love hanging out with her, like I said, because she had so much wealth of knowledge, and I just love being in service, and I love seeing her in service. And so, and then I could see, like, she get this fulfillment from helping other people, and I wanted to have that same fulfillment, and so to me, like, she was the coolest person to be around, just because of her way of being able to connect with people and engage people and find out what they need and get to the point. She's a very to the point person, right? If you heard me, and I told you guys before we got on, hey, I promise you, we love each other. We're just very direct people. We're engaging, each other just because we're just kind of to the point people.
So Joe, also, your great grandmother mentioned it. You mentioned it in this conversation. And I'm sure people could figure it out, but give your explanation on why the 2.5 miles.
So the 2.5 miles signifies the 2.5 years it took for the news to travel that through Galveston that slaves were free in Texas. And so we got the news kind of last, but ironically, we weren't the only ones to get the news last. I read about it. I don't have the specific date, but I know up north there was another state as well that was 6 months after when we found out the information. But we celebrate Juneteenth, and she says that's truly the day of freedom, because that was the day that everyone was signified, everyone was free. And so you'll hear her often say, we're not free until we're all free. And that was the biggest thing, is technically we weren't free until everyone got the news. And then that kind of ties into what she was saying earlier. There are aspects of some pieces that we're working on legislatively wise in regards to educational policy, in understanding that there are certain pieces in place, even here in the state of Texas, that had been ruled in 2014. The educational structures are unconstitutional as far as the financing and the structures of financing between the haves and have-nots. I believe that there's no such thing as the student achievement gap. And if you work in education, you know exactly what that means. That means when they track the colors, the demographics between white students and students of color, whether it be Hispanic, Indian, brown, or whatever, there's always seems to be this gap between students that in their performances. What we're starting to find is it's not a achievement gap, it's an opportunity gap. And it ties directly into what she's saying about voting for freedom, having a true understanding and engagement of equity, building equity through our practices and the policies that we work to create and the people we put in the seats to make the policies. That's important too.
It definitely is, especially somebody like myself who works in education. You know, I work in education, so there's no two ways about it. And I definitely understand what she was saying and what you're saying. And speaking of education, let's talk about that. So we heard her talk about education. You can talk about it. So your role is what in education right now, Joe?
So right now I'm actually a summer school principal out in Conroe ISD. I'm assistant principal throughout the school year. I also lead. I'm one of the team leaders for our district's diversity and equity training team. I help train on and create digital training content for equity, educational diversity and inclusion, because what we're noticing is when you're engaging someone of a different culture, you gotta have insight, and we have to have people to build empathy. What happens when we're uncomfortable with something? We tend to shy away from it. And the thing is, when you're enlisted with a child's life and their education, you have to be comfortable with that kid. Even your colleagues, you know, we're all different, we're all diverse, and so I'm so proud of my school district and the work that we've done to really say, hey, look, we got to do better in aspects of diversity and inclusion, and making sure we have the right people at the table, and we're building a bridge to make sure we address the needs of everyone. And that's again, all that ties into if you heard back with my, if I can just keep going back to that, it's important because she's lived it. You know, and this is someone, and there's been many articles. I know MSNBC probably did the best story on her in engaging when her house was bombed when she was 12 years old, and June 19th, 1939. You know, a white mob, they had just crossed the color line, and they were one of the few African American families, if not the first one on that street, on Annie Street, you know, York Avenue and Annie Street, that lived there, and a white mob attacked their home. Over 500 people showed up and their house was bombed, and the police did not help at that time, right? And so instead of having bitterness about it, she said, no, we have to have a better understanding. Had they got a chance to know us, they would have known we would have been good neighbors. And what's interesting is we have family meetings, we talk, we have Thanksgiving dinner. She has a huge, I'm talking about huge, hundreds of people come to our house for New Year's dinners, and I did not hear this story until probably 5-6 years ago. You know, since it was one of those things, sometimes we go and experience things, we just kind of keep to ourselves, you know, and it kind of drives us. But it did not drive her towards hate. It drove her to saying, hey, people just need a better understanding of people from diverse backgrounds. People just need a better understanding of each other, and we'll start to realize that we have a lot more in common than we need to, a lot more in common than we think.
Yes, and thank you, Sandy, for dropping the link to the interview that Joe was talking about in MSNBC in the chat. So if you see the chat, Sandy just dropped it in there for you all. So thank you for that. You also, so again, we know you, and we know we've been, like I said, we've been chapter brothers. We were chapter brothers for a while before you moved to Houston. You served as president. But I also know that you didn't start in education in your background. Did your great grandmother influence some way have has influence you to go into education? And before you answer that, so we'll think on influences. Answer a question that in the chat. You are a Sigma.
Yes, yes, sir.
Incorporated. She is a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. Did she have any influence on you that way? So did she have influence you in education? Did she have any influence you in getting to the best family outside of your family, my family, this family?
So I'm going to tell you what she influenced me on the most was music. I wanted to play the clarinet, and my family could not afford to buy me a clarinet. And so she wanted me to play. And so she got me my first horn. And she looked at me. She said, she said, "Hey, this instrument costs a lot of money. Promise me that you'll never quit playing. It'll take you places." And I didn't. And I was first chair clarinet in high school. I was all region, all area clarinetist. I went to school for music, the University of North Texas. I wanted to graduate in music, but I ended up going English. English with a minor in technical editing, and then going the alt cert route. And so I never quit playing. I still play to this day. I got keyboards and guitars and all kinds of stuff right here, and I play with my students in class and so forth. And she's right. I've been to all over the country. I was in one of the top symphonies. Sorry, there's a fly right here. One of the top symphonies for the University of North Texas. And then I went to Africa. I traveled the world. Playing my horn because I gave her my word I wouldn't quit it. And so she influenced that piece. I always wanted to teach. It's just at the time that wasn't a route that I could take due to a hiring freeze. So I went and worked for a mattress firm, and I ended up going into training development with them for a few years before I went into education. And so I actually was in still am, I'm a life member there as well, of an organization called Alpha Phi Omega, where it's all community service, because that's all I love. I just, I love doing community service with her. That's what I wanted to do. And I came home one time with my letters on, and I lived with my granddad at the time, and my grandfather is a Sigma. And so he hit me in the chest. And so it's a community service organization, and I had the opportunity to join another one. And so I remember I could finally read the letters. I'd seen blue and white, like in the garage, and these different boards, because he had went to Paul Quinn and crossed there before he got drafted. And so I finally could read the letters and understood what it meant. And for me, my grandfather, he's one of my best friends. And I was like, my grandfather is not a follower. He's a leader. And I was like, man, what in the world made him want to join that organization? I got to get to know those guys. Right. And so then the rest was history. I got to learn about them. Then I graduated, and then I joined the Omicron Sigma chapter of Phi Beta Sigma, the North Dallas chapter. Ended up being the president there, also regional director of education for Texas, Louisiana, New Mexico for 4 years. And I now sit on the international team for special assignments with the international director of education and creating educational projects and programs that are going to truly impact our communities, which is, one thing I was really big on the 4 years I served as the regional director of education and as president of Omicron Sigma too. So that's how I was influenced with Phi Beta Sigma. And then, I knew she was, I always knew she was a Zeta, but I was following the footsteps of my granddad, who's my best friend. And then my music aspect. Music is my passion. I love to play, but I was a practice junkie. I didn't want to teach my passion, which is why I went into teaching English. I went into teaching English.
Granddad, whose mom is
right
here. So it all still trickled down in some type of way. Some ways. Didn't hear me? No?
Yeah, you good. Yeah, I heard you.
All right.
Oh, and by the way, she actually went to North Texas State University, which is UNT, when it was a teacher school. She went there to become to become a teacher. And so I used to be an RA there. And so I don't know if you guys saw the story. There's a story out right now that she's getting ready to help build a $70 million Juneteenth museum. What you don't know is she already built a Juneteenth museum. She asked for one of again, she goes for no. About 6-7 years ago, I was sitting in the board meeting. She went to the president of the school board and said, hey, you have a high school that you're not using. Give me that. How much are you going to sell me that building for? I want that building. How much are you going to sell me that building for? They wouldn't sell it to her. So she said, you know what? Fine. I got these 2 properties right here on a certain street in Fort Worth. I'm just going to make them to Juneteenth museums. And if you go there right now, I don't know if it's still open or not, but she literally for over probably close to 10 years, she turned 2 of her houses into, like, they're right next to each other, into Juneteenth museums. And so she would come up to UNT, and I would have to host different events for, because I was an RA, for one of the halls there at UNT. She would come and sit in our lobby and talk with kids. She would bring different tools and show them what cotton looked like, how you had to peel it, and different things like that, and kind of talk about Juneteenth, but also aspects of growing up in an era where work was not just hard, it was really hard. She had to walk 5 miles to go to school every day and so forth like that. So to even not only see see it become law, to me, that's her true dream right there, that building. is to be able to have something that houses our history as well, just like the National African American Museum in DC.
I'm not to bring myself back on the screen right now, but I'll just say, like, again, she's a legit icon, like a legit living legend icon. Like, there's no other way to describe her. I mean, of course you can't, that's your great grandma, but like for us here, you know, who got to see her, talk to her, just now listen to her, she's a legit walking history, living legend icon. Like whatever, what I mean, and I know it's important to talk about the GOAT. She's the GOAT right now. Like not right now, but she's the GOAT. Like literally, like Kobe can't stop her, like Jordan can't stop her, like LeBron can't stop her. She's like the legit GOAT right now. Like you can't say Juneteenth without saying Opal Lee, and that's huge.
And you know, and the biggest thing about that, and why I laugh sometimes, or you know, is because literally, man, I've been in like she has like this huge industrial printer in her office. In she turned her garage into an office. Man, it'd be some summers we'd be in there stuffing, folding, you know, making Juneteenth pamphlets. Like she didn't wait for this to happen. She did it on her own at first. You know, and then when opportunity came, she just was able. She already had their certain structures in place, ideas of how she wanted it to look like, and that's why it was able to expand so quickly. Like I said, they didn't want to give her a building, so she made her own building. She wanted the elderly to have access to computers, so she created that avenue. You know, and a lot of times she'll try to see who can help her, and if someone can't help her, she say, "Well, I'm just gonna make it happen myself and see what happens." You know, does it render success every time? No, not at all. However, you know, it definitely puts her in a position to, with hard work, you know, to render certain aspects of success or end goals that she wants.
You can call your great grandmother the GOAT, man. There's no wrong in saying that. You're openly stand right now. Like it's fine to be openly stand. I'm openly stand right now. I'm convinced. Like I'm going out and get me a shirt. Say I'm openly stand. Like it's like that's what's going on. But I also I asked her about what does it mean to her to have your daughter to be there with her, and like I think that's what really got me emotional to hear that part. Like you know, like she was just said she saved me. She like lived saved my life that day. That's huge.
Yeah, that was last year. We were in Galveston, and it was Labor Day. It was Labor Day weekend, Labor Day Monday to kick off Juneteenth. We went to Galveston. We walked Galveston. They talked about the history. We went to the mural. You know, we had the mayor of Galveston there. You know, and me and Grace, you know, were walking with her, and so it was. I didn't know she was that tired at the time, but I just knew she was ecstatic to see Grace, and that was actually her first time meeting Grace. You have to understand too. My baby is 2 years old. She was born June 8th, 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, and so that was her first time ever meeting Grace. You know, because my biggest thing is her and my grandfather. Until there was a vaccine, we protected them at all costs, right? Especially her. And so you got to think about it. All of her walking and everything like that. We're our family. We're like, holy crap! Can someone tell her to put a mask on her, or you know, like you know, because again, she goes for no. Right. So she is definitely, you know, we got that taken care of to where I feel comfortable with making sure she got introduced to Grace. And so she called me. I called her about this, and I told her, I said, I'm going to tell you how big time you are. When people call me asking about you, I said, that's how you know you're big time. And she said, hey, are you coming to the walk? I promise you, I wouldn't lie to you. I told her no 4 times that I was not coming to that walk. If you look closely, she's pushing my daughter, and I'm behind her walking, probably holding up the umbrella to give her shade, right? Because she goes for no, you know. And so she's like, I gotta have Grace. I want Grace there. I gotta have her, you know. And so to me, that's always special to see, you know, her walking. And it was, so I'm telling you right now, that route we took was a beast, and it was hot, and go uphill, and to take it and be able to lean on and push my daughter, you know, to have the, you know, like you say, the now, because she's not the past, the now pushing the future forward. I don't take that lightly. I don't take those moments, hot or not. I don't take those moments lightly. And as you see in the photo, you know, get an opportunity to hang out with possibly, you know, future, if not future governor, future senator, you know, Beto. And I won't share the private conversations him and I had behind the scenes, you know, but we had some pretty good ones, you know, and the thing is, you know, understanding the engagement piece as far as politically, like I said, civic engagement, and knowing which things to engage about is just as important too. And I will tell you, educational policy did come up in one of our conversations. I'll keep our conversation private, between him and I, but we did engage multiple times. And he also pushed my daughter in the stroller, a few times. Throughout the march as well, throughout the walk as well. So very genuine guy, wish him the best of luck. But, again, just hanging around my grandma for the last 20 years. I've been engaged in conversations with city. I think the mayor, in fact, the mayor came up to me during the walk as well. She saw me putting ice on Grace. At first I didn't recognize her because she's new. I'm so used to the previous mayor, but just the access that she has. But it's also because, like you say, the influence and people knowing that when you want something done, you go to her. And so sometimes it leads to, just because I'm off on the sidelines, making sure she's taken care of and safe and everything like that. Sometimes it leads to genuine conversations with city officials and just gaining their interest. And I can find out pretty quickly if they're there to for themselves or for for the cause. And so I've had opportunity to truly meet people without the cameras, without the lights, and truly have conversations that need to happen. Whether they use it to take action or not. We always look at, we're all built in our family. If we're engaged in conversation, to be able to drive in thoughtful conversations.
I want to take the time right now just to remind people that if you have a question, please drop it in the chat. We're coming on the last about 12 minutes of this program for tonight. So if you have a question for Joe, put it in the chat now. And also just another housekeeping reminder, at the end of the program, when you leave the webinar, another screen will pop up to ask you to go to a different screen. It's WebEx people, just work with it. We'll ask you for another screen to ask you to fill out a survey. Please fill out the survey so we can continue to programming like this with those you're interested in. With that being said, Joe, I'll ask you a question for one of your former chapter brothers and my current still chapter brother, his brother Zeph. He asked you, are you able to trace the history back to the actual Galveston announcement document? Able to trace your history back to the announcement of the document? And what made your great grandmother take up this challenge?
Having her house bombed on Juneteenth was something that always kind of stuck with her. And we tracked our history. I can't tell you it. We tracked her history, but we know like a pretty good amount of our history. Whereas our family were slaves in Texarkana. We actually have 40 acres in Texarkana as well. And I don't remember the origins of where we're from, but we did have our lineage traced. And so I think her biggest thing about it was it was just such an important piece of history that she felt like it needed to be recognized. And it impacted more people than we think. It's more than just Texas. And as people from Texas began to travel and go all over it, she really felt like it was something that needed to be nationally recognized and so forth. So, I love, like, one of her favorite shows is Blackish. And one of my favorite episodes, and one of her favorite episodes is the Juneteenth, when they talk about Juneteenth, and it's a great story up behind that as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I want to do a real quick unofficial polling real quick. So everybody in the chat, we got a couple people listening on Facebook. We got a couple people here live in the WebEx. Real quick, for me, if you were taught Juneteenth in any point in school, grade school, high school, college, if you were not taught, how about this? Let's do this. If you were not taught about Juneteenth and while you was in school, let us know in the chat right now, because I wasn't. Like I lived in New York. I went to school in New York. I went to school in Louisiana, and I really didn't hear about Juneteenth until I moved here to Dallas. And I really didn't grasp even further into, I would say I've been in Dallas for 13 years. So like really like the last, I'll honestly say like 6, like half the time I've been here, like I really got the grasp of it. So again, by you being an educator, what did you get? Like how was it like really to you?
So that's so funny that you say that. First off, I got it from her. She already had books, but she actually recently just made her own book, and there's a book about her that's sold at like Targets and Costco's, Barnes and Noble. But she has her own book as well. But here's the kicker: I'm working to get at the state level, but for my district, I'm on the African American Studies curriculum team, and so I've looked at the TEKS, the Texas Educational Knowledge Standards. I've looked at the educational standards that are needed. It's actually a requirement to teach about Juneteenth toward the end of the year. It's in the curriculum. But a lot of people aren't doing it, or they're wrapping up the school year, so forth like that. In social studies, they're supposed to teach it. It's in the so whenever the state governs the structures of curriculum, which is a pretty big deal because we're dealing with a lot of aspects of possible looking at inequities within that too. Juneteenth was already passed when it came to it must be taught. So we got something for that as well. I can't give you guys all the details. Just know we're working to create certain structures and curriculum that's going to go along with the book that she already created to make sure that it's adopted by the state of Texas as well.
Again, I'm always trying to make sure that we share the book with the people. This is the book here. You can order it. This is the website for Joe, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'll drop a link to the website in the chat in a minute here. But this way you can go and find it at all about Dr. Opal Lee and all of this, all of her things she's going on, updates and things of that nature. And I thank everybody for in the WebEx. Anytime you look at the Facebook, thank everybody in the WebEx who commented on the question I just asked. And we have people of all ages, that at least people that I named that I recognize, all ages, said it was not taught. And most of these people are live in the South. We have some people from up north that wasn't taught it either, but we have people in Louisiana, state right next door, that was not taught about Juneteenth in school. What do you have to say about like that? Like,
and that's the thing, man. I mean, how many of us have heard history or our history in barbershops or family cookouts, or one story was passed down from person to person? You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of what Juneteenth was at first. It was like this theory, this story, this folks tale, almost. It's almost like this folks tale of when we got the news. And some people are like, yeah, whatever, but some people are like, no, it's true. It's like true history. And so the thing about solidifying it into a national holiday is it can no longer be ignored, right? The story is no longer just in kickbacks and barbecues or Uncle Ray Ray's house or anything like that. It is truly history that must be recognized. Now, we all know too, with it being recognized, there also comes aspects of marketing, exploitation, because now it's cemented. It's the first national holiday since Martin Luther King Day. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which is a big deal. That's really huge. I think next up is like National Voting Day. We'll see if that hits the docket, right? Like giving people the day off to go vote, and so that one may be harder to push than Juneteenth, if I'm being honest. But we're not here for that. So, for me, it's when I talked with my, like I said, I'm summer school principal right now, and on Friday we did a little segment about Juneteenth, and when I put up the slide about my grandmother, and to be able to forever, not just next year forever, connect the history and the bill, the law with my family member. Like I said, I take great pride in that, and that means a lot. And to be able to look at my daughter one day, I mean, I tell her now, but she don't understand. But to look at my daughter one day and show her pictures of her being pushed by her great grandmother decades from now, right? To me, that does something to me. And that's special. And that's, like you say, truly cementing the things. And that's why she's nominated right now for a Nobel Peace Prize too. So to me, I'm grateful because I've seen I'm 34 years old. For 33 of them, I've seen her push and no cameras around. There were no future governors walking, or there were no presidents, mentioning her at the podium or stage, right? But she did it anyway. And a lot of times we have goals and things that we want to get done, even for myself. And you may be the only person that believes in it. All you need is 1, 2 people to buy in with you. And sometimes you don't even need that to make things happen. You have to believe it first before anybody else. So she believed in it first before anybody else. And she just found more people that agreed with her that it needs to make, and found a way to make it happen.
Folks here to wrap up time, Joe. So I'm going to ask one more time. This is my last call for questions in the if you have a question in the comments, again, please drop it in. have a question for Joe, drop it in the chat. Again, this is my first time. I'm not on the side of the technology. We got behind the scenes. Big things that happen. So if you have a question for Joe, drop it in the chat now. Again, for those who are watching on our Facebook live stream, we'll if you drop it in, we'll try to answer it. Not time we can answer it live, but if you're in the WebEx, drop it in now. Ask your questions now. Joe, my second to last question is: you talked about your daughter. You talked about years from now. What did it mean to you? We talked. You and I talked about this. What did it mean to you when you saw your daughter standing in front of the TV, watching her great grandmother have a bill signed that she worked so hard for by a president, and also standing next to the first Black woman vice president? Like,
I can finally look at that picture without getting teary-eyed a little bit. When you brought it up, like how you just delivered it, I got a little bit. It's one of those things that I'm going to get framed one day. It's one of those photos that I'm gonna get framed. I don't care how blurry it is or whatever, because to me, that was a phenomenal moment, not just for my grandmother, but for our family and for my daughter to do that in that moment. To me, that's nothing but God. Honestly, for her to be in that moment and stand up and clap the way that she did, looking at the TV screen, to me was really like, sometimes God just gives you these little nods that, he's always in control. He's always working, and so for her to be unaware, but to be in that moment and be aware and to stand in front of the TV and clap as the bill was getting signed and she watched her great grandmother beside the president meant the world to me, man. It meant a lot, and so, I love one thing I love more. There's nothing more I love more than being a father. And being a father to my daughter. And so to see that and to see a lot of my grandmother's characteristics, that relentlessness, like I said, not going to bed, but she's a leader. I tell people, and I joke about all the time about negative connotations of calling a young woman of color bossy or sassy. Or if I get a message or someone says that, and I gently correct them and say, hey, my baby's a leader. Don't call her bossy or sassy. That's a negative connotation that's usually geared towards young ladies. And I said, we don't tell boys that. We don't say that, so for me, and then, we take pride as Rolands, like our name, carrying our namesake and really having an understanding of our history. And there's nothing wrong with being vocal the right way and with tact and with professionalism to make the stand that you need to make. You don't have to be ugly and nasty to tell the truth. You can just drive it and move forward. Whether they want to take the truth or not, what I'm saying, that's up to them. So, I see a lot of my baby's characteristics that my great grandmother has. I see it in her already, that drive and determination. It is my job to foster it, to make sure that it comes out to a healthy place to where she can continue to move forward and be successful in her own way.
Definitely great. All right, so we did get a question. Sorry, we did get a question. Let's see. It says, what can we learn from Opal? Ms. Opal, when each of us are told no in the name of school, in the name of social change. Let me read this again. I went to public school, people. Give me a chance. All right, what can we learn from Ms. Opal when each of us are told no in the name of social change? How can we hold the line or go over the line to advance social progress?
So it's a very meticulous process. Marches, like I said, marches are great. Changing policies are better. So then you have to start asking the right questions. How do I change policy? You got to start looking at the people who are in control of changing policy. Then you say, I wonder if that person that we voted for is truly aligned with the policies that we want. Then you go and you call that person and you request a meeting with them. And you say, when do you have time to meet with one of, basically what we have to learn is they work for us. One thing my grandmother learned a long time ago, they work for us. And if it's somebody that's earned your vote, make them continue to work for your vote. Great, you're in the seat now. Here are the changes that we would like to see. Now, we're all for coming up with compromises and things like that, but don't pack up my bill with changes that are going to derail what we're trying to do also. So whenever looking at like, man, I want social change, I want this, the question what you really want is, I want equitable practices in developing policy that's going to make sure that social change happens. We can yell for social change all we want until we change the rules of the game. The game is always going to be played the same way. And so you have to start being smart. Do you know that certain people buy houses and move into districts so that they can have those people win because they know they're going to be ran unopposed? Did you know that people look at a trend of zip codes just like they do for student performance in certain school districts and targeted areas of voting so that they can have favor that leads to a good ground game 10 years from now? That's how deep in understanding it goes. You really have to sit and be an outstanding planner and understand civic engagement because the tidal waves of social injustice are going to keep happening and occurring, but the practices and pieces that we need to put in place are when we put the pressure in sitting in certain meetings, sitting in city council meetings, looking at people who's running for what and who has aspirations of running and who's being shaped to run, right? In the next by 2030, right? And so right now we should be looking at 2025, 2030. If we want to start truly making an impact, and I know y'all feel like, man, that's a long time from now. It's 120 months. All right, that's 120 months. In the next 120 months, that's when you're truly going to have the change in policy that you want to see. If you're going to truly see it, you got to get started on it. You got to get started on planning. That's how much planning it takes. Think about it. She's been doing this for 45 years. She's been running Juneteenth events for 45 years. She's been walking every year for 6 years, not just the last two. She's been walking every year for 6 years to the White House for 6 years, going to people who are in favor of Juneteenth for 6 years, the Congressional Black Caucus. It takes time for change, right? So that would be my tidbit for you guys is begin to start asking the right questions, doing some research, and starting to realize who lives where and why and where should you live. Maybe you need to move over or go somewhere to where you can have a seat or put somebody up to be able to be the voice. Because I'm going to tell you right now, as an administrator who's over discipline, budgets, creating diversity policy, it's so much that happens in these seats where we impact lives, even in the educational setting. And I thank God every day for giving me the ability to impact people in a positive way. Now, I don't always hear parents or people good news or things that they want to hear about their child, but I always believe in leading in transparency and doing, I say good leaders do hard things and being able to do it that way. You're mute.
Again, I'm the guy who put the button behind me. That answer was a great way to end this conversation, this interview. Like I said, it's more of a conversation than an interview. So Joe, I greatly appreciate you, brother. You and your family tonight has literally touched me in a beautiful way. Like just amazing. Just again, from a personal standpoint, just knowing you the past almost 8 years now, I look at you as a little brother at times. I'm glad to see things that you have done, father you have become. I like seeing the moments of you and your daughter, that being a girl dad, and just again, and then just the whole family lineage. I'm like getting emotional again, but the whole family lineage, like it's a beautiful thing. You know, I know it starts with your great grandmother. I've seen pictures from you and your dad, and your grandfather bowling this weekend, and so all that. Like it starts somewhere. You know what I mean? So like I said, like it started at the beginning. Like she just seems like she's that person who, the glue that brings
Right.
everybody, and it trickle. And it is again, just feel like it just trickles down from there throughout the family. So brother, I thank you for this evening. It has been amazing. I like to thank India Williams for hosting tonight and being the president. We have some more work to do. We have a big task ahead of us now. We got to somehow we got to try to top this now. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I mean, we don't have many goats to celebrate out there. So so this is gonna be hard to top. I also like to thank Dallas College for providing this WebEx platform. So we'd like to thank them for allowing us to use this platform. I'd like to thank everybody in the WebEx who attended in real time, the people on Facebook. Miss India, any last words you'd like to have, ma'am?
Oh no, I just want to thank everyone for being here. Thank you, Joe, and even coordinating with Miss Opal for us to even see her. To even, I know we had like a little preliminary meeting to talk about how today was going to go, and I wasn't even expecting to see her today, so that was a great surprise. So I just really thank you, really for your partnership in all of this.
No, no, thank you guys for the opportunity to speak and advocate for some of those pieces. Like she says, the work is yet to be done. I'll be honest, I don't even like telling people she's my grandma because she truly believes we all have a responsibility to make our own marks, right? And so, but when people find out, that makes sense, and so for me, my thing is I want to create in change through policy, whether it be educational, civic engagement. I believe there's aspects of equity that we need to continue to fight for children of diverse backgrounds, but also there's this thing going on with classism, where the achievement, the opportunity gaps are being divided by the have and have nots, and it's just not, it just doesn't sit well with me. Someone who comes from being labeled economically disadvantaged before, and there's plenty of children now, and now we're dealing with something we're not gonna know the true effects of for the over 2 decades with the quote unquote COVID gap or slide that's occurring in education too. So we can say that for another topic. Thank you guys again for the opportunity to speak on my great grandmother and bringing her on. I know she's a hoot. If y'all heard us, our engagement setting up before, I promise we love each other, how we talk with each other. We're just direct people. And we're with each other a lot. Last time I was with her, doing something like this, she actually won an award from the Texas Education Agency State Board. I had wrote something for her, and she won for her district. So we have different encounters with each other. I try to continue to find ways, even with my busy schedule, to spend time with her. So for you guys to have this setting and me to get more time with my grandmother, I am grateful. So thank you for that.
On that note, we're gonna leave. We're gonna just say bye. Again, thank you everybody. I greatly appreciate everybody who attended. Again, last thing, when you leave the WebEx, those who will be on the WebEx, when you leave, you would get a form, a screen will pop up. I'll take you to another screen. Again, WebEx 7. Just do the survey for us, please, and let us know your true opinion, how you felt about this. And with that, remember, she said Juneteenth was from yesterday. So July 4th. So we got some more. We still got some more celebrating to do. We got some more community changes and positivity to get out there. It's just not about party and festive, like she said. Remember to keep that in mind. And with that, God bless y'all. I love y'all. I'll talk with everyone soon. I know people gonna hit me up. I'll feel like a rock star. I don't feel like I'm a Opal Lee great grandchild for a minute. But with all that said, we'll talk with y'all later. Joe, India, stay for a minute, and thank you all. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.